Okay, boxing fans. Bullshit in Boxing, Episode 1. Andrzej Fonfara versus Adonis Stevenson. The big fight. First, before we get into the prediction, I'm going to give you a quick timeline. Stevenson basically exploded onto the scene this time last year, desecrating Chad Dawson in round 1. Takes on the overrated and probably the weakest world champion at the time, but he'd lost his title anyway, coming off a loss. Tavoris Cloud destroyed him. Then he takes on his mandatory, the overrated fighter Tony Bellew on HBO, destroys him. All that within 6 or 7 months. Hype's going through the roof. He's got a great following. People on the bandwagon. Everything's looking good right now for boxing in the light heavyweight division, in which has been a very hot and cold division over the last few years. Stevenson on a collision course with the other HBO light heavyweight decimator and desecrator of fighters, Sergey Kovalev. People are excited. People are arguing who's going to win. Fanboys running scared. Stevenson signs with Al Heyman, moves his fights to Showtime instead of HBO, and basically the fight's now in tatters with Kovalev. Stevenson's popularity takes a nosedive. Now what we're left with is a showcase fight on Showtime with no end product. The idea was this showcase fight was going to showcase both fighters. You know, Kovalev had his fight, Stevenson has his showcase fight, and then they go head to head in the next year and kill each other. And it would have been brilliant. Now Stevenson went, I'm not doing that. I'll still have my showcase fight, which Showtime were nice enough to overbid for. And then what's the end product? The only end product that I can see for this showcase fight would be a fight with Bernard Hopkins. And if that doesn't come through and he just has another showcase fight and another showcase fight and another showcase fight, that just adds to the problem in boxing. And a few people are thinking, what is the problem in boxing? And this is the problem with boxing, and it's going to be the reason it will forever be a niche sport. Forever a sport that's frowned upon by other boxing fans, sports fans, excuse me. A sport that doesn't command the biggest money for 95% of the participants. You know, the reason the budget for boxing year upon year is being slashed. And if you don't know what the problem is, I'll tell you the problem. The biggest fights don't happen. Let's look at any real sport, okay? And I mean, I think boxing's a real sport. I love boxing. Boxing's probably the only sport I watch all the time. But let me just take you through a few other sports, okay? Let's look at tennis for a minute. Andy Murray cannot say I'm not playing Rafa Nadal or Novak Djokovic. I refuse to play them, but I'll play Tsonga instead. Yeah, I'll beat him. I'll play him. Don't put me against those guys. Put me against Tsonga. I'll beat him. That don't happen. Let's look at the world's biggest game, football. The biggest games happen year in, year out. Boca Juniors play River Plate each year. It's called Super Clasico. Barcelona versus Real Madrid happens each year. It's called El Clasico. Liverpool versus Man United happens each year. It's the biggest game in English football. Rangers and Celtic play each other each year. Well, until Rangers got relegated. It's called the Old Firm Derby. These happen year on, year out. They get the biggest buzz in sport, and they've got their own fucking names like El Clasico, Super Clasico, stuff like that. In boxing, the biggest fights never happen. Ever. I can't remember the biggest fight that... In fact, I'll tell you, the biggest fight that last happened, if it wasn't David Haye versus Vladimir Klitschko, or Klitschko versus Povetkin, it was... Well, you'd have to say Canelo versus Mayweather or Nonito Donaire versus Rigondeaux. Those are the only fights that have happened, but there's been bigger fights that could still happen for a lot of those, especially for Mayweather. So, until some type of revolution happens where boxing's put into some type of systematic format or a league, or there's some incentive for these guys to fight each other, then boxing's just going to keep where it is now, being a niche sport that people frown upon. Shit happens, and it's a load of bullshit. Hence, bullshit boxing news. Right? Let's move. We're going to talk about the actual fight, Stevenson versus Fonfara. A lot of people say, why have you been ranting on this video? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's a pointless fight. Okay? It's a pointless fight. I've asked a lot of people who would win this fight, and my statistics come back and show me not one person has said Fonfara's going to win. Not one. Okay? 100% expectation rate on Stevenson to win this fight. 95% of which say you'll win by KO. You know what I'm saying? 60% say within the first 6 rounds. Now, I'm not going to go against the trend here. Stevenson's going to win this fight by knockout, probably early. And you know what? I've just looked at the boxing odds, and if you want to bet on it, you can bet on it, okay? Stevenson to win by knockout, for every pound you put on, you get 11 pence back. If you just want to bet on Stevenson to win by any method, okay, enjoy your 2p back. Brilliant. Next question is, we might as well just do the post-fight now. Okay, we'll do the post-fight now. Okay, so, okay, boxing fans. Adonis Stevenson wins this fight via way of knockout. The question is, what is next for Adonis Stevenson? Adonis Stevenson is now going to go on and probably fight Bernard Hopkins. The question is, does anybody want to see that fight? I've got no callers on the line, so I'll just answer it myself. To be honest, it's not the fight I'm looking for. It's not the fight I was looking forward to. I wanted him to fight Sergey Kovalev. I don't care about Showtime versus HBO. Fuck that. All I want to see is the best fights. If the best fights happened, boxing would be in the best place possible. It would be on TV every single week. Instead, put it like this: Sky have had one show this month, and it's a 5 week month, and they're gonna have their next show on next week. So, you know, put it like that. Boxing's not doing too well right now. Stevenson Fonfara is the reason why, really. Fights like this, showcase fights where there's no point in them. No point in them. You know, Stevenson versus Hopkins probably next. Who do I think is going to win that fight? You know something? I'll bet on the underdog in that fight. If Hopkins is the underdog, I'm going to bet Hopkins by unanimous decision. Thanks for listening, guys. Tell me who you think is going to win the next fight. In fact, tell me who you think is going to fight Stevenson versus Fonfara. And if you think Fonfara is going to win, tell me why. And don't just say it just to mess up my statistics. You know, be real and tell me why, and then show me your betting slip or something.